Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a special meeting of council. We are here together to discuss the Planning Advisory Committee recommendation on the Shell property and to set a date for the public hearing. Maybe I'll ask Albert if you'd start us off just to summarize where we are and our next steps forward.
Okay. So the application that's come in on your desk, I've passed out a revised sketch from the applicant. What that sketch does is recognize the recommendation that was made by the Bridgetown Area Advisory Committee and the PAC. So what she's doing is drawing a new sketch showing the location of the main tents, those sorts of things, and showing the concurrence with the 50-foot setback behind the residential. So the institutional zone would start in behind the residential, but there would be no change in zoning to the environmental open space zone there. PAC has met. PAC has made a recommendation. In terms of going forward, what is needed at this point is a notice that you're accepting it. Council must give notice of first reading. All municipal amendments must be read twice. After the first reading, you're advertising your notice of intent to the world to adopt this amendment. That is the purpose of a first reading. In terms of process, the public hearing is advertised for 2 consecutive weeks. And it must appear in the newspaper given those 14 clear days. That's the issue what we're dealing with. After the public hearing, anybody, and I'll just remind you, have to be at the public hearing to vote. And after the public hearing, it's second and final reading, and that's our process as it unfolds.
And what's the earliest possible date that we could set that public meeting for with our current timelines and the requirement for advertising?
The current timelines, when I look at everything, if the ad goes out this week, normally I have the ad. I hurt my knee yesterday. I got some time.
Okay, of course.
The ad wouldn't appear until the 6th.
Okay.
Because it's a one-week newspaper, right? Then that would mean the earliest day, taking in mind the advertising on the 6th and the 13th, that we would be looking at the earliest being February the 21st.
Okay. All right.
That would give us the 14 clear days.
Okay.
I will just mention the last one. The clear day does not include a date of advertisement. It's the day after. That's why it's called clear day.
Okay. Understood. All right. So,
February 21 is the earliest.
the earliest possible date.
That's the tax sale offer.
Oh, good to know. You've got the number up in front. Can you scroll down a little bit? Next week.
Yours is here, right?
All right. And what's on the 27th?
That's a John. So we have to
How does the 27th of February look for you folks? No? It's a problem?
I'm going to be in Halifax that day, doctor's appointment.
Understood. How about the 28th?
28 is clear for me.
Clear for you? Does anyone have a conflict on the 28th?
What's the date? The day?
It's a Friday. Yeah. So usually Fridays are clear bets.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. Are we getting ahead of ourselves procedurally?
How so?
I'm not sure we've done anything at this meeting except talk about an other meeting
Yes.
on the subject of which we have not made a decision. Or is there a decision to be made?
My understanding is that the next decision point is at the public meeting, as opposed. It is here.
First reading has to be given. There has to be a motion come out of this giving notice of first reading.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, we have the recommendation before us. Perhaps the deputy warden could read the recommendation for us.
Well, you have PAC.
The PAC recommendation.
So we're going
That's all right.
28.
28. Well, depends on what
And then this.
you
Planning Advisory Committee recommendation. It was moved by Councillor Hemmings, second by Member Shields, that following the full consideration of the related goals, objectives, and policies of the Bridgetown Municipal Strategy that PAC recommend to Municipal Council to amend the Bridgetown Land Use Bylaw zoning map to rezone that portion of the Steve and Carrie Shale property, PID number 05150610, commencing 50 feet south of the existing residential dwelling, 98 Granville Street, and running to the Conservation of 02 zone for the residential light density R1 to the institutional 11 to permit the redeveloping of that portion of property as a women's mental health and alcohol treatment center.
So that is the recommendation.
That's the recommendation from the PAC. Do we have a suggested wording for the motion that needs to be made for first reading for right now?
Actually, the first reading would follow from that, which is...
So we just need to have somebody...
So I do have a suggested wording for first reading.
There we go.
If that's what your motion is.
That's what I'm looking for.
If that's what your intended motion is.
So the motion would be...
In accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee, I move the full consideration of the related goals, objectives, and policies of the Bridgetown Municipal Planning Strategy that Municipal Council give first reading of its intent to amend the Bridgetown Land Use Bylaw zoning map to rezone that portion of the Stephen and Carrie Shell property, PID 05150610, commencing 50 feet south of the existing residential dwelling, 98 Granville Street, and running to the Conservation 02 zone from the residential light density R1 to the institutional I1 to permit the redevelopment of that portion of the property as a women's mental health and alcohol treatment center.
Could I have somebody make that motion so we can put it on the floor for discussion? So the motion moved by Councillor Hemmings, seconded by? Seconded by Councillor Gunn. Thank you so much. Discussion on the motion. Okay, folks. Deputy Warden.
I have a couple questions, and I know I wasn't able to attend the previous meeting. Does the water and sewer go there already?
They'd be having a secondary hookup put through, and it's at their expense to have that done.
At their expense?
Yeah.
Has the driveway been approved?
There's no new driveway being developed. It's the existing driveway on the property, and the existing driveway is both long enough and wide enough to accommodate the roughly 4 vehicles for themselves, plus the staff that would be in attendance. The patients who would be in attendance at the facility would almost exclusively be flying in. They'd be taken by a shuttle from the airport in Halifax and driven out, so they wouldn't have their own vehicles there to be stored. So the current driveway is sufficient.
So that...
Is Alvin?
Not really.
Though that was the understanding we had from the last meeting. Has something changed?
There is an existing driveway, but any time, whether it's a subdivision or a new land use bylaw amendment or something like this, there is a requirement that it's a residential driveway and it has to be assessed for commercial access.
Yes.
And what I said at the last meeting was the applicant will put in a application to the traffic authority, and the traffic authority makes that determination whether it will pass commercial access.
Okay. So, but there's no proposal to use a driveway other than the current driveway.
No.
That was what I was getting at. Yeah. So there's a study that has to be done. Yeah.
So, I mean, my thoughts are, should not that driveway study be done before this is approved?
I think Albert indicated before that's a subsequent step. Is it?
Council has a choice when it comes to these types of things. And as I mentioned in the first meeting, in the PAC meeting, when council is reviewing these things, you have a balancing act between how much information you want the applicant to spend first and how much do you feel that you can consider and move on with, and knowing that the applicant has to provide that afterwards. There is a inherent danger, of course, in terms of legal process by not getting all of your information up front, and that if it's a review at the Utility Review Board, there is a policy that talks about have you considered the driveway or egress and ingress
Ingress and egress.
Ingress and egress. Yeah. But this is the same thing you run into when an applicant gives you a site plan. You do not have a professional site plan. You know, it's difficult to tell exactly how far the buildings or the tents are going to be away from the property line. There will be requirement for building permits. There will probably be required for fire inspections. The tents themselves, will they pass the, just trying to remember the name. It's the one that, you know, you buy a lamp to pass the campus standard.
Yes. Right.
All of those things are stuff that, you know, the applicant hasn't provided ahead of time. They can provide them afterwards. If it fails, then the application would not be able to move forward for other reasons. So it's a balancing act.
Thank you. Deputy Warden, further questions?
So this is zoned right now residential.
That's right.
My understanding. And we want to put, or we have an application, I guess, to put a commercial,
Or institutional, light institution.
but is it a non-profit?
No, but I don't think there's a requirement for an institutional zoning to be not-for-profit. So institutional would be, it's the same zoning that you'd have for a daycare facility and a lot of similar things, but those could be for-profit.
And, I mean, my understanding is the neighbor was in at the last meeting.
That's right.
I wish I would have had the input from him. But, I mean, and my other concern is there's no limit on how big this can get with a neighbor right in the vicinity of where it is. And there's concerns that I feel I haven't done my due diligence by not having the driveway study done, because I don't want the motion to pass and then somebody appeal it and then they have things that they could use it to review.
Understood. Thank you. Anything further, Deputy Warden? Okay, let's go on to Councillor Sheridan.
So I agree with Councillor Roberts in regards to the driveway. I'm thinking maybe that should be priority for them to have looked at first and then bring it back. But after giving it second thought, after leaving the meeting, there's other concerns, but I think we should start there, that maybe that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you very much. What I'm reading, and that maybe it's been touched before and I missed it, but I don't see a right-of-way. And if we're going to subdivide a property, which is what I'm looking at in this picture here, and a line drawn across it, and there's going to be something in back of it, where's the right-of-way? Is there something in the Albert before that land? That would be landlocked afterward, wouldn't it?
That line that you see there is the zoning boundary. It does not create a land division line. They have no plans to subdivide it in there. And I don't believe you can create a lot without frontage anyway in the Bridgetown land use bylaw.
So this is not a subdivision. No, they're not proposing that.
No.
And the property does already actually have a zoning division on it, because the back area of the property up by the river is it's zoned for conservation. So it currently does actually have two zones on the property, so this would add a third zone of the property. Okay, Councillor LeBlanc.
And I have issues with the fact that, this map is a little better than what we had the other evening when we were looking at it. But I look at this and I know that in the county that we have two other areas that we have similar, not totally the same as this, but similar aspect. But they're in buildings. I find this totally alarming for safety in different ways. Safety on the part of the people that will be there. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. And safety for the public, and the noise area for where it's going to be. And when you have commercial like this, it can grow. And these tents can go up quite easily. So how many are we going to have? So I'm not quite sure that we have all the information that we do need to go with this, because with the climate and everything that goes on, it's a danger for if we had a big storm, it's a danger to them as well. What are you going to do with these people? And I mean, there are 8 separate units, right? So even if you have 2 people, You can't be in 4 different places. One can't be in 4 different places and watch 4 different tents. I find there's a lot of issues with this. Now, if it was a building and they were contained, I'd say, oh, well, okay, I have a better safety aspect with this. But this, I have all sorts of, they can be free and other people in the public can be free to go, and it's almost a safety issue on different levels. And we do not have all the information that we're supposed to get. And mind you, this is a better drawing. It's still, is this what it's going to be? Is it steadfast? And I don't know that we should go on before we accept all of the information that we need to be sure, because this is a residential. I love the idea. I don't like the place. And especially when I come up with so many, to me, red flags in safety. Thank you.
Thank you. I would concur with you. This is a slightly better drawing than the last one, but the really big problem that I have is it's so completely not to scale. Because this tent here is 48 feet long, and that's 50 feet.
Yes.
And that's 238 feet.
Exactly.
So if it was more to scale, it would make it much easier to sort of wrap my head around exactly what it is we're looking at. I know the property. I've seen it both from the river and from the road. So I can sort of locate things, but not with the sort of accuracy that I'd really prefer.
And I only saw it from the road. And it's very close to two different homes. And I mean, if it was in a different place, I probably would have no problem. Still have a problem with the safety issue with these tents being all over the place, and dealing with children and adults, things can happen really quick, and you would need one person on one person, and that's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. I also had some difficulties trying to comprehend the drawing. And I'm concerned that this use is not compatible with the surrounding areas. And I'm also concerned about the traffic study. And I would be prepared to offer an amendment at the end of the last sentence of the motion. And I would move we insert the wording pending consideration of a traffic study.
Would our mover and seconder be agreeable to that amendment, or should we do this formally and make it a motion? Let's do it formally.
Yes.
That's a motion. Can I have a seconder for the motion for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor McNeil. Discussion on the amendment. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. All right, and John.
So, just Albert, so that means you're not doing first reading today.
Yes.
So it has to go back for further information, just so people are clear. This will not be approving the first reading today.
Yes.
Can we have to reschedule?
Well, that's assuming that the motion is passed in this configuration with the amendment. So we don't even know what council will do when it reaches that point.
No, but this resolution is sending it back for further information.
Yes.
Yes.
If it passes. If the rest,
It just
that was the amendment.
The
You haven't passed the core resolution itself, which includes the amendment.
As amended.
Question?
Would you? Well, I still have two people on the list. So, Councillor McNeil.
My question is that I see the property is 238 feet wide, but there's no length on this. Do you know how deep it is from their property line to the back?
Well, it should be 140 according to this. Is 50, and this down here says 90.
Yeah, but that's only 90 to that one building.
So I said another
1,000 feet.
50, 200.
It's not to scale.
No, so,
It's-
no, not at all.
Yeah. Actually, I'll go to Councillor Fowler next, and then but I'll add you on. Councillor Fowler.
Well,
Sorry, Councillor McNeil, you weren't complete.
I'm waiting for an answer from Albert there.
Sorry.
Can't give you a perfect one, but what I can tell you is that if you take from the back of the deck, it's 50 feet to that boundary line.
Right.
Then, from that to the start of the OS, even though it comes at a bit of an angle, and it's shaped like a bit of a hockey stick there, that from that 50-foot boundary to the OS is approximately 160 feet. And width-wise, the property between the OS and the eastern boundary is about 193 feet.
What's OS?
The conservation zone.
Oh, the conservation zone. Okay.
So it's about 190 feet from that zone.
It's about 190 feet. That area, that the bulk area they have is roughly 193 feet wide by about, my number here, about 160 feet long.
150?
160.
60.
Roughly.
Problem number 2.
So that's not taking the 50 feet out of it from the back of the dwelling? No.
That is the approximate developable area.
Correct, okay. So that leaves 110 feet for that area.
That's right.
And that's what concerns me with that is that it'd be 193 by 110. You could literally put a campground in there.
It's good size.
Yeah.
And it's one of the, it's moving things forward through this process doesn't have some of the subtle ability to establish conditions that you would have with a development agreement. So that you're right, it doesn't give us that capacity.
That's my big concern there, so it's just, anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Well, I was going to make a motion to either table or defer unless until we got all the information, so I guess.
The way it's now currently built into the motion, you're all right with that?
Yeah, I'm all right with now, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. Councillor Gunn?
You know, my question is evaded.
Thank you. Councillor Henning?
It's really interesting. I couldn't disagree with anything that was raised today. I mean, every concern that was raised, I had as well. My question is not about all that as much as the process. And I love the land use process because it really flushes out. It's a strategy to flush out all the differences a community may have. So if I understand the process right, someone owns a piece of property, dreams up an idea of creating a mental health center. And so they take that to Albert and his staff for a general go-around, see if there's some compatibility. They understand the rules and regulations. And then it goes to the area, the Bridgetown Advisory Committee. And they look at it, and they have a discussion, they pass it, and it comes to us at our PAC. We listen to a little bit of input from a couple more citizens and the proponent, and we make a decision to bring it here. The decision here is, I understand, is really twofold. We can just go ahead and pass it, have a public hearing with it, that we're all giving our intent to pass this. Doesn't mean we're going to pass it. We give our intent to pass it. And so this body now, I said, no, there's enough issues that we want to send it back to get more information. So that all seems like a good process to me. That seems like it works. So I like what we're doing. At each step, there's a chance, an opportunity, a strategy to get out more information. And I think that it works.
Albert first, and then I'll come to Councillor Gunn.
Just to add in terms of that process, the first step actually is council accepts the application for processing before it goes to, in this case, the Bridgetown Area Advisory Committee. So if council didn't accept it for processing, council's other choice could be to reject it at that point in time. The cautionary note, if I understand the motion, is to not give first reading until after a traffic study. The cautionary note to that is, and I can't remember the section of the MGA, and I didn't bring it with me, but what it says, and I think it says, if council has not held a public hearing within, and I can't remember if it was 120 or 150 days, the application is deemed refused. That's a timeout clause that's in the Municipal Government Act, so that applications don't sit on the books forever.
Within 150 days of what point? When it's originally received?
And I believe, and as I said, I'm just going by pure memory here, I believe it's from the time that council accepted the application initially.
And when did that happen? What was the date for that?
You're right, yeah. They submitted the application on December the 2nd.
Okay. So you said 150 days?
I
or
can't
90
remember, it was
days?
120 or 150, because some changes were done to the Municipal Government Act. There's changes that...
So let's say 120.
So if it's 120, they'd still have a 2-month window.
Yeah.
Roughly, which should that should be sufficient? Yes.
It all depends, if that's the case, it depends on the applicant. But you're delaying a decision until you get some information is what this is doing.
Right. Okay. All right. If we're getting information from the applicant, it might be it might be something useful to. If actual samples or photographs of the actual sorts of tents that the applicant's intending to use could be circulated for council, because we're having to imagine what the structures are like, because I've spent time at Celtic festivals and Renaissance fairs and Highland Games and things like that. I know a lot of people who work for a good half of the year, every single year, in temporary structures, in like wall tents and things like that, or Renaissance style tents, and I've seen that, and I'm not particularly concerned about that aspect of it because it's fairly familiar to me, but I think that probably having actual examples of what the structures would look like would be a useful thing for council.
Yes.
Yes, Albert?
Right now, the motion only talks about the traffic impact study.
Yes.
I know, and I wouldn't presume to make that a condition, but I'm suggesting it in the presence of our planner that probably would be a helpful thing if that did come back.
Right. And all I was going to suggest that if you're looking at that, are you satisfied with the drawing?
No, that's the other page.
Yeah. Something with the scale a little bit clearer would be helpful too.
More precise, definitely precise.
All right.
Yes.
Further discussion from Councillor
Thank you,
Dunn.
and I just wanted to make, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
And it really wasn't pertinent to the subject we were talking, other than when it comes to looking at this property map, and I'm thinking, when I want to look at a property and I got a PID number, I usually go on Viewpoint. And I don't know, are we not allowed to use Viewpoint here to bring up a property and look at a property and say, well, here's the property, what it looks like, or maybe we don't have the capability of putting it on the screen or something, I don't know. But I'm just, just throwing that out there, that sometimes when you want to look at a property, Viewpoint's really handy.
I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be possible, because it's just a screen and Viewpoint you can access to from a computer. So I think it should work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Making that point out there when we want to look at a property.
Further thoughts, folks?
I agree. Really nice.
Just a question, I guess.
Councillor McNeil.
Should we, I know Councillor Morrison made that amendment for a traffic study, but I'm wondering whether or not the added part of that should be driveway clearance, sewer line.
You want the sewer lines installed?
They got to bring sewer from the house to the bathroom. So that's going to be another approval down the road.
I thought that the intention was to have new lines at the owner's expense put in from the primary lines for both sewer and water. Wasn't that the intention, Albert?
That has to be because the municipal plan requires that any institutional use be serviced by municipal water and sewer. So the applicant would have to provide that information to the municipal engineering department, and they would have to review it in terms of pumping requirements, lateral sizes, all those sorts of things.
So you'd like all the specifications for that?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is there's going to be, the driveway's got to get cleared by the traffic authority.
Yeah.
And the water sewer has got to be approved by engineering. So, I mean, we're talking about a traffic survey. Those things don't happen just like that.
That's right.
So, I guess what I'm wondering is whether those other stipulations should be there as well.
Albert, do you want to speak to that?
There's two terms floating around right now, and I'm getting a little confused on it. Maybe we can ask Steve here. Are we talking about a traffic impact study, or are we talking about what your requirement would be, just a driveway access, commercial stop site distance check for commercial access? Which one do you want?
Well, what I've heard in terms of the intended volume, I think we're just looking as to whether the approach or the improvement needs to be wide. I would likely go to one of our consulting engineers, have a discussion with them. We talked to TI, we would likely have the traffic counts for that particular area coming into Bridgetown in terms of the potential conflicts of turning left or turning right and slowing traffic down that speed zone. And then review that with our engineers that will probably give me some parameters about what to ask the client or they perform in terms of the necessary traffic study. But right now, I'm hearing that clients won't have their own vehicles that will be staffed or I anticipate is really what will be accessed. But I would like the opportunity to review with one of our consultants and get those TIR numbers, which those are readily available in terms of traffic counts passing by that traffic.
Is there any cost for the applicant attending this kind of a process?
Absolutely, yeah. They would, if they require a full traffic study based on traffic counts, they would have to retain a qualified engineer that would go through the data. I don't believe it would be necessary to sit out there and click cars because I believe all the traffic data is available, but somebody would have to assess it and make a recommendation.
And
that's what we would look for in terms of accepting a recommendation from a qualified professional.
And similarly, if we were to require the engineering to be done and figured out for water and for sewer, those are all costs.
Yeah, that's not the applicant's cost. I don't see, what I see from the application is the separate service so that the commercial entity or the institutional entity is separate from the house. It has to be its own dedicated line going into the facility to the point where they have their own collection system on site. It's their responsibility, but they would be responsible, as our sewer bylaw says, from where they input wastewater all the way to the main. That's the applicant's responsibility. On the water side, we would look at the intended demand from the power tanks or the central kitchen and the size of service there. I don't think that's a significant issue in terms of those issues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sheridan and Councillor Hemming.
So regarding the washrooms, because when she presented, she said that there were going to be 8 individual washrooms, 1 for each tent. So how does that come into play with how we assess our sewer tax rate? Is that 8 separate sewer taxes for that property? Or is it 1? So, because it is 8 different units.
Steve?
The Bridgetown sewer is based on the water consumption, so it's a prorated cost based on your water consumption. It's like 80% is a factor in the wastewater. I don't have the exact calculation, but it's not a lump sum cost. It's based on the water consumption.
Okay, so it's because this other owner that happened to have a cottage in his backyard, we had an issue because he was being charged additional sewer tax for that building. But that wasn't in Bridgetown, it was in a different area.
That's the difference.
So Bridgetown is the only area that has this, like Nicktaw doesn't, and the rest of the county does not.
So where it's tied to water usage.
Okay, I wasn't aware.
Cornwall's commercial has that same kind of ratio. So.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
Councillor Hemming.
Well, at least what I don't want to do is make the process so onerous. I mean, if there's any guarantee of driving creativity and innovation and development out of a county, it's making the process so expensive and onerous that people can't dream of it. And so I think for me, my intent to do this is that we can raise all those issues, that the sewer and water has to work, the driveway has to be ironed out, all those sort of things. And if that's the case, then I can support that. Otherwise, but to go out and have to do all these studies, for example, 11 councillors could sit around and 6 of them, of us, could say, you know, the idea of having a treatment center for people living in tents in an area like this is absolutely unacceptable. So you have to get 6 votes. Another person says, yeah, that's probably unacceptable to me, but I could live with that, but I want to know sewer and water. So they said, okay, then you got to spend money to do the sewer and water. So an applicant could spend all this money and time and energy knowing full and maybe not even knowing that even if they did all that, spent all that money, it's still not going to pass because you're treating people in tents and that's objectionable. So I'm trying to figure out this fairness piece, and to me the fairness piece is that I intend to approve this if these things that we're raising and can raise again are satisfied. And if they can satisfy me that the highway thing's going to work, and that they will apply for all the sewer, and there's a permitting process, and they follow all that, then I'm okay with it. Unless at the end of the day, I keep thinking, no, the idea of the security is really an issue. It's coming to the forefront. So that's my thing. If you make it so onerous that you don't get bad ideas and good ideas coming at you now and then, that's not a good picture, man. And I've been part of some communities where it's absolutely only the rich can play because they have the money to do it. So I want to be careful on what we're asking for and at what time, but they're all legitimate concerns.
Thank you, Councillor. I confess I share that concern. A lot of the issues to do with sewer and water, they have their own set of regulations that surround those things. They have to be done. They have to be done correctly, and they have to be inspected and demonstrated they're done correctly. I'm reluctant to force an applicant to jump over an awful lot of hurdles before we even agree to schedule a public meeting. It feels that it does feel a bit onerous to me to do that. Similarly to, I think that the process of the driveway study, that has to be done at some point in the process. The question is, do we need it up front? We know in the course of proceeding forward that it will be done. Do we need it before we can schedule a public meeting and before the community can discuss it as a whole? Councillor McNeil?
If I might, my main concern is the cost of that. That's going to be a considerable cost for the applicant here.
Yes.
Are they willing to pay that?
If they're not willing, they can't.
If they don't know what the cost is going to be to run sewer and water from the main line to that building, I mean, I would say we're looking at probably 100 feet easy to that bathroom facility, and that's not going to be cheap.
And it also has to go to the eating facility. Right?
And I agree. I think the cost is significant, but also it's not an application that the actual development couldn't happen unless those things are done, right? So the question is, how much of that cost do we have them there before we even actually set up a decision point in the process as we move forward? And how much, I would like to assume that for most applicants that you do at least a measure of due diligence before you plan a project this year. You've got a budget, you try to figure out what your expenses are going to be. You know that you're required to put in water and sewer, so that all those things can't be surprises to them. But the question is, at what point do they start to incur the expenses for having those things done? I would very much like to see this process reach the point of a public meeting, because to me that's a really critical part of what it is that we do. And again, this is just my own personal opinion. I'd be reluctant to put an awful lot of hurdles in advance of getting to that point where they can have that public meeting, because then that should take place. And I don't want to slow that too much, and I don't want to make it too onerous to get to that point. But again, that's just an opinion. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. He's going to put an extra pipe in there, just to get this right. He's going to have 2 sewer charges once he puts that extra pipe in there, isn't he? Isn't that what you said?
They'll likely have a meter box or a central meter, which all water to the facility is distributed. That will be the sewer charge. The resident will have his own meter. There'll be two separate accounts.
2 separate accounts for water.
You're right.
That's right.
And 2 separate accounts for sewer. One for, as I understand the application, the resident will be separate. Everything else in terms of the facility will be on its own account.
And that's connecting to the main sewer.
Right.
So that is a second connection.
That will be a second consider a second connection. And just to chase on to one thing Albert had said here a moment ago too as well. To quote you, Albert, he said, any institution has to be serviced by municipal water and sewer. It's just a statement you made there a few minutes ago, is that right?
In the Bridgetown plan?
That's a requirement under that.
In the Bridgetown plan alone?
Yeah.
That's not blanket across the county or anything like that?
We're still working with the Bridgetown municipal planning documents because they've not been integrated into the rest of the county.
Most of the county's not zoned.
That's right.
Okay, so that's only where it's zoned?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, folks, or Albert? And I'll come over to Councilor.
Okay,
Albert, go ahead.
Policy 8.4 also requires, and I'm reading from my PAC request for decision in the background and options considered. Policy 8.4 also requires that institutional uses can only be permitted where central water and sewer are available.
Good. Thank you. Councillor McNeil.
I just started reading what Albert was saying here. My train of thought when the train drove out of the station on me. No, I'm going to have to.
That's no trouble.
But if you see me go,
I'll come right back to you then. All right. Yeah.
I do know.
There
I just caught the train.
Did I hear, or is it that the Bridgetown PAC recommended this, but there was a stipulation in their recommendation?
No. The Bridgetown Area Advisory Committee recommended it unanimously, and there were no stipulations. The only thing that happened is the original application had been to rezone the entirety of the property, and by the time the application came to the Bridgetown Area Advisory Committee, that had been amended in consultation with the planner and the applicant, so that only the back portion of the property. So and I think the thinking behind that was it limits the possibility of a future use that diverges too broadly from the original intention of the application, because the house is the primary source of value on the property. So as long as it stays a house and can be nothing but a house, it's a limit to what you can do with the property.
Maybe that was it then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
I kind of agree with you, Mr. Warden, that it would be nice to get it to that next step. But when we were in Bridgetown last, and I remember asking Albert a question, how long has it been zoned R1, that area? He said about 18 years, and I said, but how long has it been a residential area? And he threw out the number 1825. And I remember saying out loud that anybody who moved there would have a reasonable expectation that it would remain R1 with that history of the area. But I voted to move it to here with an open mind. But I also heard another councillor saying something about a dream, and when I see this as my document, I see it as a dream. I don't see enough preparation for me to say we should advance it another step and disrupt an R1 area and turn it into a institutional zone based on a dream. It's just not enough for me. So I just needed to say that. That's all.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, for people who've been in the area for longer than I have, I thought there had been a doctor's office on that strip at some point in the not too distant past.
Dentist.
It was a dentist's office. So it's before there was zoning. Once the zoning came in, it was straight residential. But if you go back a little distance behind that, we don't track those things because there wouldn't have been zoning. But I think there was a medical office there. Yeah. You said a dentist.
They were dentists.
Yeah.
There were two of them.
That was the next door property.
The next door property?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one 2 houses beyond that as well.
I only knew about the one.
Yeah.
No, the 2.
So just if historical precedent matters, I thought that was useful to have.
Yeah.
Because a dentist's office or a doctor's office would be institutional as well. It'd be an institutional zone.
Yeah.
Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. I don't want to answer that. I missed the one in Bridgetown. I'm sorry, I missed that. But the idea is basically, and it's laid out now, I see here, he wants to put 8 tents and 2 other big tents there. Is there anything permanent going other than the sewer line?
The foundation
facility will be
The foundation.
The foundation's under the tents because they'll be
All the
built
tents.
on
Those will all be like
on wooden
floating
platforms.
slabs or something.
Yeah, something like that.
In the zoning.
In the zone. Pardon me? And the zoning. I can see a nice campground there eventually. But, yeah.
The bathroom, if I might, the bathroom facility will be a
Yes.
permanent fixture.
That's right. You have to be.
Because that's essentially what it, sorry, to shut that. That's essentially what it's going to be, is a campground. He can call it a rehabilitation and alcohol center all he wants. It's basically going to be a campground.
And in a lot of ways, that's one of the most apt analogies. If you think, I think about Keji. Keji has yurts, right? And they're open right from May until the end of October as well, and people are able to go and use those. There's a meditation facility up in Cape Breton that has an outdoor tent. But it's not for people who are recovering from an addiction. It's for people who want to go and do yoga, right? And of course, Windhorse Farms, I think, also has some outdoor accommodations that are like that, are sort of semi-permanent structures. So if viewed in that respect, it's not unique in the province. There are other places that do very similar kinds of things.
To carry on from that, it is going to be a campground, but is he going to, will we get taxes from this? Will we get taxes from this entity going there, other than just sewer and water, if that's, much more? What will Annapolis County gain from it? And will what they bring here and what they're using in and around Bridgetown in the area on our tax, will the tax strain they create on us, will it balance out? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Because we're going to bring a whole bunch more people home, much more traffic here, using a whole bunch more of the services we provide. Are we going to get any taxes out of it?
Well, let's address the taxes thing first, because I think that you touched on something that's quite significant in terms of area impact, because the primary area impact of this sort of facility is that it brings revenue to the area. These are people coming from out of province. They're paying a significant fee in order to have access to this sort of a facility. They have to be fed, housed. There are people who are employees who have jobs that are created in order to provide those services, and they have to acquire their food and everything else locally. But the question is there a different tax rate that applies, Albert? Is there a commercial tax rate that would wind up being connected to this property if this goes through?
What I want to do is caution council in the sense of there are standard things in policy 23.7.7 anyway that talks about the review that council is allowed to do. Economic development, job creation, taxes, and those kinds of things are not in those reviews. So it's a path that you're on there.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor, anything further?
I never quite understood what you were saying there, Al.
There's a list of things that we're supposed to take into consideration when we look at an application of this sort, and that list is defined. And considering taxes isn't one of those things that we're supposed to be taking into consideration.
Oh, is that right? Orange one, you're right. Is that right? Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, that is interesting. Councillor Henry?
I love this discussion because I learn something every minute. But I didn't realize there were specific things that you couldn't ask, and there's probably a very good reason for that. But what Councilor McDonald was saying that I liked is, in a sense, that this is a dream. But the land use process, the way I understand it, is a way to manage the future, which is dreaming. It'd be nice if everything in Annapolis County could stay the way it was in 1830. Because I feel good about that. I'm a rural sort of guy. I like my place. It's 1830s, 1838 was when it was built. I like it there. But the other thing is things always change. There's going to be stressors, whether it's climate change or economic development, that's going to change the way we live. So the land use process, what I like about it, it's a way to be able to manage the future and manage the conflicts that could arise from the future. And I think that's so visionary that, and that's why I like the process and get it out to the public and get a lot of feedback on it. I mean, I've heard from 3 people who are opposed to it, two people who are in favor of it. 5 people have kind of shaped my opinion. I would like 50. Because that's the creative process. Neighbors could say, I don't care if they live in tents at all. It doesn't make any difference. That may not be an issue, but we don't know that until we get out and get the process and get the feedback. That's what, for me, a municipal government needs to do. That's the connective piece. We don't do that often, but we do it in land use issues like none other. And this is the complexity. Thank heavens that Albert's here, because it's unbelievably complex. And it's all about engaging the citizens to figure out what they want to do. And I'm sensitive to this because we're going through a new planning process in my district. And all these issues are raising them. And to watch our committee work with Albert to try and anticipate all this, what are the protections, what are the risks, good stuff. But the process really lays out something that works. So I personally don't want to tweak too much with the process. I want to get the public input, whatever that takes. If it's, I don't want to make a fool of ourselves, but if it looks like it passes an area advisory committee, if they were happy with it, which is more citizen-based, then I ought to be happy with it until I get more. So my intent is I will pass it, but I want to hear a lot of information. And at the end of that, then I'll tell you what my intent is. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Councillor Pratt.
I was just going to say, like Councillor McDonald, I agree to move it forward, the process. There are a lot of unknowns here, and I think more information is needed, as Councillor Hemming said, and others. If it were voted this morning, I'm not sure I could support it. I mean, if we were at that point in the process.
Yes.
But it's good to move it forward. See, probably I have a question.
John?
I just want to add that I think you're handling it appropriately in the sense that this is a quasi-judicial role that you're in right now. So it's actually a tribunal. So I think the call for further information is where you are. I think everybody is maintaining an open mind, and that's a requirement in these circumstances. So I think the process of getting further information as it relates to what our Director of Operations suggests for Stephen Harris. And I think you should probably go in that direction. It's your decision.
Now, I note that at the moment, the way that the motion has been amended, the only stipulation is pending consideration of a traffic study. What I would suggest is if there's further information that this body would like to have, let's make a list and provide those things to our planner so that he can at least present them. Because the applicant, of course, has an interest in ensuring that information reaches us. It makes it more likely that they'll get a decision. But if they don't know exactly what piece of information we're looking for, we're less likely to see them show up at the next meeting. So, Deputy Warden.
I would like to see a map scale. And when you do, I have a question on the traffic study. You can do a traffic study, but is that going to tell us whether the driveway passed commercially, or what's that going to tell us?
Steve's nodding.
It should tell you both. If they're going to do a traffic count, they would have to build an access that is suitable for the amount of traffic going to where they expect to be turning into that area.
But isn't there a site process in that?
A site process?
Yeah, when you come out a driveway, is there not?
Like a line of sight thing?
Yeah.
That would be a component of it.
That would be part of it, yeah.
All right, what other information would council like? So a map to scale. The traffic study is already stipulated. What else would you like to see from the applicant? Photographs of the actual structures they're intending to use?
Certainly.
Is this going to be another amendment to the motion?
I'm not certain. We'll find out what
I'd be
council
interested to see some detail of what they're actually going to build for bases.
Councillor McDonald, do you have it?
I have some, but not to add to that list.
Go ahead.
In the motion, it has council's intent. Could we soften that word intent a little bit? And I would love to hear more information, but not with the intent that I'm going to pass this in the end. That's the way I understand that motion. And I think that's a little strong for me personally.
I think intent is required for it to be considered a first reading, isn't it? So I think that word, the word that you've seized upon, I think, is actually one of the words that has to be in it in order for it to be what it is.
But doesn't that sort of imply that I've made my mind up?
No.
The word.
It's towards the end of the motion.
That's right.
First reading of its intent to amend.
That's right. First reading of its intent to amend. I intend to go out for dinner tonight with my wife, but when we actually get to that point, probably we'll be too tired to go out for dinner. So, the council can state its intention, they're not bound to it. A little further in the process, I believe we are, because I think if we actually go to the next step, then you can't substantially change the application from the next step forward because you've already indicated that you're in favor, that you're in favor broadly of the thing moving forward. And I think at second reading, you can only do minor changes, right?
Usually after or it's brought up in public hearing, but yes, you cannot make anything other than a minor. But that's usually reserved for a word amendment. So you may say something like, I want to rezone 2 properties instead of 1. That's a substantial change. Whereas if I want to move this boundary ever so minor here just to pick up so my driveway isn't in it, then that may be considered not substantial. You may be able to move ahead on something like that.
So I think for right now, our hands would be, we can pass this as it's written, and still without any difficulty vote the actual application down at first reading. That could happen.
Okay.
When you go past that, however, I think suddenly your hands are a bit more tied. Okay. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. It'd be nice if he called the duck a duck too, because his intent is to put in a mental health or alcohol treatment center. That's his intent when we talk about it. But what it is ultimately is he's going to have people camping down there. They're going through a treatment of some sort, but he's going to have people camping down there. So is it not a campground?
Well, I think
so. That's where I would like.
If it was a campground, I don't think it would fit under the institutional zone. So if it was simply a campground, what we would be doing they couldn't operate it as a campground with the zoning that we're talking about potentially putting in place. It wouldn't be permitted.
Would they be able to change it afterward?
No. Because a campground doesn't fit in that zone. It's not permitted. It's not a permitted use. So this is the intention. The intention. Do you have? Because we weren't actually at the meeting.
No.
You had a chance to see the full application with the description of the activities.
What was given to council, pass-through council.
Yeah, because
all the tent pictures and all the rest of it. I've seen it. I understand.
And the written document.
Not really. Yes. What was ever given to council, I've read through.
Okay.
But we never had anything like this. We never had any of this given to council. These must be new.
Yeah, they were presented at the PAC meeting, and that was the first time I think the council as a whole had seen those. But the intent is to be conducting therapeutic sessions. They're going to be meditation sessions, yoga sessions, individual counseling, group counseling, and then also off-site wilderness therapy. So hiking, canoeing, using the facilities within Annapolis County. So it sounded to me from how it was presented that the schedule is quite a full schedule. Like it's not simply sort of come as you are and do what you want to and hang out in the tent in the backyard. It's a very specifically designed slate of activities, and the applicant, of course, has a very extensive history in public health. So she has her PhD in public health administration. So she's been involved in facilities of this sort for some time, or at least in related fields. Councilor McNeil.
Just an FYI here, there's supposed to be a storefront opening up fairly soon with a certified counselor and a psychologist for alcohol and drug treatment in Bridgetown.
Okay.
So, just an FYI there.
Councillor LeBlanc and Councillor Morrison.
Just wondering. We were talking about the water and sewer line. And I spoke when we were talking about it. We talked about just going to the bathroom. But one of those tents has to be a place of making food, so the water line has to go even over 150 feet. Whatever this place is. Like it would have to, right? Did I understand that correctly?
That's what I assumed. Albert, was there any discussion of a kitchen facility in the backyard, or was the intention to actually use the kitchen facilities in the house?
The applicant had proposed to use the kitchen in the house. The building inspectors have to review that still to find out if that has to be upgraded to a commercial kitchen. That's what we're saying
Yeah, and these are all complications, but they are all complications the applicant is aware of. That these are hoops that she has to jump through if she wants this to materialize. So that would have to happen. All right. Do folks need more time to consider, or are you ready for actually, before we do that, let's just see, is there anything else to be added to the list? We wanted a map to scale. We'd like photos and or brochures of the tents, so we've got a visual idea of exactly what they'll be like. Is there anything else you want or need that you'd like to see from the applicant?
We have those so that they are available on the screen. If we have
Councilman, that's what Councilman done.
If we have our public meeting here, it would be good if residents or whoever comes to see this public meeting are able to see all that information as well.
The public meeting would be in Bridgetown probably at the fire hall. Is that right?
Public hearing is usually always held in council.
Oh, it's right here. Sorry, pardon me.
Public hearing.
In that case, it could be a possibility to have it so it could be on the screens.
I would suggest that you might want to have that before you even make your decision on first reading.
Okay. So we'd like the map to scale in that case, and photos and brochures, we'd like to have them in an electronic format so they can be seen on the screens. Carol.
My question is, are you adding map to scale and photos or brochures about the tents as an amendment to the motion?
Well, it sounds like, actually, I'll let Councillor Morrison go.
I would like, I guess, procedurally, do I offer a new amendment?
Another amendment.
You could have
Another amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have 3 motions on which to vote.
So you've already approved one amendment to the motion.
Okay.
If another amendment is made and approved, then the motion will encompass all of them.
I move the following amendment. After the word study, comma, map to scale, photos and brochures of intended structures, there was something else.
I think that's the only list that we, and that they be...
The study on the driveway.
That's already there. That's already in the motion. I think those were the items.
And other...
Sorry, I said digital, so they could be displayed digitally.
Yes. And other items that may be identified by staff.
Okay.
That's a hard motion to follow. That's a hard motion to fulfill.
Complete.
Because we don't know what the other item.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
We're trusting the whole.
John, you wanted to...
That's the problem with amending it. I think you defer it and then make your resolution you want information, and you schedule this meeting once you get this information.
Yeah. Ask for more information and then do this.
Yeah, so make it to... All right. So that...
Would you agree with that, Albert?
So we're going backwards.
Yeah, leaving the broad and open to what I want is kind of problematic. The other one I'm just going to suggest to Councilor Morrison is that as opposed to the use of map, a site plan to scale might be more appropriate for
Okay. I hear the Chief Administrative Officer correctly. I would not make, of course, I have not made an amendment to the amendment.
Right.
I would withdraw my amendment, and we would defer action on this item.
Yes.
I withdraw my amendment.
And would like to ask for a motion in that case to defer the decision on this.
So defer the recommended motion.
Defer the
Second is a motion, so...
Oh, so you agree with it having withdrawn? All right. Would someone like to make a motion to defer the recommended action?
Yes, please.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by the Deputy Warden. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Hemming.
It's a little confusing. What's in front of us now is the word brochures of structures.
No.
No. Because that's been withdrawn.
Oh, okay, but that's okay.
So are you deferring the recommended action until further information is received?
Pending the receipt of further information, and then we can make a resolution to outline what that information should consist of.
You can defer and give it a date.
Do you want to give it a date?
Well, I'd like, if I may, I'd like to be bound by receipt of the information, if that is the date.
If you don't give it a date, your table really is, I guess, would be procedurally the difference. So you defer and give it time.
Maybe the whole.
Yeah, should we do?
And the application times out if it misses those timelines in the municipal government where a public hearing is not held.
Okay, so should we defer in that case to committee of the whole for February? All right.
Does that work out?
And then committee of the whole can only recommend to council,
Yes.
which will be Council in Inglewood in February. And then
Or a special meeting.
Or a
after.
or a
meeting.
special meeting.
We always knew that the Inglewood may, some form of that meeting may not work for a public hearing, so we'd have to schedule a special meeting is what we would suggest.
Okay. All right. So we've had did we have a seconder for that?
Deputy Warden Roberts.
Yes. All right.
But-
Further discussion on the motion to defer to committee of the whole in February. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. And now we could make a further resolution to stipulate the information that we'd like to receive. Councillor Morrison.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. All right.
Just when you're getting ready to make your motion, if you were planning to have it on the committee of the whole, you probably want the information in time so that it's circulated in the packages.
Yes.
So whatever the date that is, it should be when you want the information back.
11th is committee of the whole.
Yes, so the deadline for information is February 3rd. That's Monday.
Okay.
Yes, that's this Monday.
Is it feasible to see a traffic study being done by Monday?
Why is it Monday?
It's the Monday before because
A week
that's when
before
the
to get it on the agenda.
It's 8 days prior to the meeting,
Right, but you don't circle the agenda until...
until the Thursday, but I have to have the stuff to put in the
Right.
agenda. And that 8 days is
Maybe we could
policy.
have it in by Wednesday, but that be, just give time to get it in, because Monday's very quick.
I'm just saying, that's.
No, I understand,
requirement.
but the agenda doesn't get circulated till Thursday, so if the information is available for Wednesday, it to be put on the agenda.
And particularly if we are actually going to be requesting that they have the traffic analysis done, that's not something that happens instantly. I don't want to preclude it and slam the doors because we're dogmatic about our dates. All right.
That's it.
Okay. All right. So it's been, if that's been moved, Council. So would we like to make a resolution about the information we'd like to have come back? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'd like to make a resolution in that case to have the. So we need a mover to move to request a traffic study for the property.
So is this for the applicant to request a traffic
That's
study?
right. A site plan to scale, and photos and/or brochures for the tents. And with a request that information be available in digital format.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Fowler, second by the Deputy Warden.
I don't know if we can say it has to be digital format. I don't think we're permitted to do that.
Okay, all right.
Preference.
Could we simply have it conveyed through the planner that if it could be available in a digital format, it would make it easier for people in the room to see?
It's quite possible I might have you scan it and
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Okay, Councilor Hank.
If anyone doesn't believe a council thinks through stuff, they ought to sit in one of these meetings. I think this is remarkable. But I have a little question.
Yes.
The way that it's written, photos and/or brochures of structures. That means they could give you a brochure that may not contain a photograph.
I was thinking that those commercial brochures for a company that's selling product will have photographs.
Well, that's the assumption. I can imagine a brochure that does not have a photograph. So I just think the intent was we want to see a picture of what they're building.
Photos covers it.
Yeah, photos, period.
Take a brochure.
Okay.
Photo only may not answer the question, but maybe answer stuff.
Right.
Doesn't meet that criteria.
You need a
So ask for
photo
that.
brochure.
And that should be in the brochure.
It should be.
So I put brochure back in.
Yeah.
Or at least, I'll make that information, pertinent information.
All right. So
Speak to that.
so we've had it, this has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion on this motion to request these pieces of information?
One more.
Councilor
Do
Gunn?
we know what they're going to be setting on these tents?
They're
I don't
wooden-
imagine cement. I imagine, I'm sure
They're wooden platform. I think it'd be just like the yurt stands in Kedzie, so it'd be on wooden platforms. Is that correct, Albert? The intention's have it on wooden platforms?
Their intention.
Okay. Anything further? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. All right, folks. Whew. Well done. We have several items to discuss in camera under the MGA Section 22.2E, contract negotiations, C, personnel, A, acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property, and F, litigation or potential litigation. So the full gamut. Could I have a motion to go in camera under those sections? Moved by Councilor McNeil, seconded by Councilor Sheridan. Discussion? No discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Could we have a motion to add those two items to the agenda, please? Thank you.
The election and the Target 1 project.
Yes.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Gunn. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
So the motion for approval to proceed with Target 1 is to support participation in the Annapolis County Lands in the Pathway to Canada Target 1 initiative.
Moved by Councillor Hemming and seconded by Councillor McNeil. Discussion of the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
And for election costs, it would be to borrow from the operating reserve to hire a returning officer and assistant returning officer for the upcoming October 2020 municipal election.
Moved by the Deputy Warden and seconded by Councillor Gunn. Discussion of the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will now declare the meeting adjourned.